Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So it's Monday night look back at a classic album, and the album I've chosen to do today is this one. Yes, Peter Gabriel III, and some people call it Melt, but I just call it Peter Gabriel III. Okay, so about this album. Okay, it was released May the 30th, 1979. Manor Mobile, Bath, that townhouse in London. It's about 45 minutes or more, so it's a fairly lengthy album from that time period. Label is Charisma in the UK, Geffen in the US after 1983, and Mercury in the US from 1980 till 83. Produced by Steve Lillywhite, of course. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the musicians that are playing on this album first. It's fairly lengthy, so please bear with me, and it's also very tiny. Okay, so playing on here, of course, is Peter Gabriel, who does vocals on all 10 tracks. And he does backing vocals on a fair number of tracks, and some synthesizer bass synthesizers and piano as well. He also does some whistles and some drum patterns on other tracks. Jerry Marotta, sorry, I never can get these things right. Jerry Marotta. He was a drummer on most of the tracks and percussion on a couple on this album. Also, Phil Collins, Genesis drummer, does drums on a couple of tracks, tracks 1 and 2. The drum pattern, he does a drum pattern as well, snare and surdo. Maurice Pert does percussion on 3 tracks as well. John Giblin, bass on 4 tracks. Larry Fast, synthesizers, bass, and just plain synthesizers, as well as processing synthesized bagpipes on various different tracks as well. Tony Levin plays stick on 4 tracks. David Rhodes' guitar on most of the other tracks, on actually more than half of the tracks. He also does backing vocals on 3 tracks. Paul Weller is a guitar player on 1 track anyways. Robert Fripp appears on this album, he of King Crimson, doing 2 tracks on guitar and 1 guitar burst on a second track. Dave Gregory, he plays guitar on a couple of tracks. Kate Bush does backing vocals on a couple of tracks. Dick Morrissey, saxophone on 4 tracks. Hugh Badgham, I think that's how you say it, plays the whistles on 1 track anyways. Steve Lillywhite, who produces the album, also does the whistles on that same track as Hugh Badgham plays on. And the finaling is some screeches are done on track number 10 by Dave Ferguson. So it's a fairly lengthy list of people who appear on this Gabriel album. It's not uncommon. A lot of these guys appear on most of his albums. So he has like a group of people that he likes to work with. There are, I believe there's 10 tracks on this album, so just give me a second and we will go over them. And there you go. Okay, so this to me is a master album. The only one of Gabriel's who gets that qualification with me. Although he's got a couple that are real close to the line here. But anyways, he is not in my group of 7, but I'm thinking at some point this summer I'm going to add him to my group, which will then become a group of 8. So it'll be the first time that level has changed, and it's been a group of 7 for about 17 years anyways, at least, that same 7 group. Same 7 bands combined for those positions, but Gabriel's totals and his overall production and his albums and my liking of his character and all of the things that go into making a group, he's reached that, I think, and maybe exceeded it and deserves to be put in that group. So You know, as they would say, the G7 is now the G8. I haven't officially made it that so yet, but I think it'll happen in the summertime. He'll be the first solo musician to do such a thing. So on this album, we have basically 10 tracks. Starts out with Intruder, pretty heavy song. I think Phil Collins is the drummer on this particular track. Really one of my favorite tracks here on this album. Really launches the album well. It's heavy. It's almost like an introduction to the album. Then we have No Self-Control, which I think is arguably one of my top 2 or 3 songs on this album. The next one up is called Start. It's kind of a little lead-in to I Don't Remember, which is a top shelf Gabriel song. Maybe in my top 5 Gabriel songs of all time. I Don't Remember. I don't recall. I have no memories of anything at all. And then we go to Family Snapshot, which was a song that for many years I really didn't listen to too much and probably held this album back. But in the last few years I've listened to it more. It's not a great kind of heavy song or a real catchy beats or anything. It does tell a pretty interesting story from his perspective. So definitely worth listening to that song. The side 2 is what I call a perfect album side. There isn't a weak song on this side of the album. Of course, on the CD, it's just one side. It's just all one side. But and Through the Wire has always been one of my favorite Gabriel songs. I think it is just typical of his music. It's so good and so memorable. Then we come to Games Without Frontiers with all of its whistles and bells, no puns intended. To me, it's my favorite Gabriel song. I just think that it is in a class by itself. It's almost the Stairway to Heaven of Peter Gabriel, in my way of thinking. But the only difference is that Stairway to Heaven long burned itself out with me, where this song does not. I still love it. I still listen to it. I just love everything about it. I love the heavy guitar. I love everything. And the drum beat, which is just catchy as hell. Not One of Us is about racism, basically, but you know, that's the thing about Gabriel. He writes things in a way about events or world events and stuff like that have an impact, but he writes it in such a way that makes it interesting. And none so much as Not One of Us tells a story about, you know, how people click and push people out who are different. You know, Lead a Normal Life. I really think this song is very underrated. One of the most underrated songs in Gabriel's catalog. I like the little. I'm thinking it's a marimba. It sounds like a marimba sound in it, which is really, really decent and really adds to the whole flavor of the album. And then, of course, it ends off with the classic Biko, the story of Stephen Biko from South Africa, and all the African music that he puts in it, as well as the heavy drums. And I believe this is the other track that Collins is on. I could be wrong, but I think so. So there you have it. That's the track by track breakdown. I think the album overall, top shelf, master album. Cover's good. Peter Gabriel always seems to find to get his face on the cover of these albums, but always different too. He's a master of, video making as well, which is part of his intrigue. Overall, it has a kind of progressive rock sound to it, although it's what they would call world music as well. There's that world sound to it. But always with him, it's relative, or relative stories that are relative to the time period, and definitely like Stephen Biko and the Family Snapshot really really encapture what he's trying to achieve here. And the album is very cohesive. It has a kind of a thread going through it. The music is very good, and there's a lot of little things in here to listen to. Noises that you don't normally hear on an album, but fit very well together. He's orchestrated everything and put everything together very well. And it's a Grandmaster album in my thing for a reason. It's just, and you know, he has a lot of really good albums, but this one, he just knocked it out of the park with. So, if you haven't listened to Gabriel before and you're thinking of getting into him, this is the one. Give it a shot. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. We'll be doing another look back again next Monday. Haven't decided on what yet. This one was kind of starting a bit of a Gabriel theme this week. Not as themey as it was with Heart, but you know, definitely has a bit of a theme going on this week. And I just wanted to, I got this album. The funny part about this album is I've never had it. My friend had it, and then I had it briefly for so I did have it a bit. I did have it briefly for a cassette, but ever since I got it a week or two ago, I've been listening to it. It's such a good album. Okay, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day. Prog Monster out.